What if I told you that this company accomplished the impossible?
Okay, well, good luck trying to polish a turd.
They polished a turd so much that it ceased being a turd and became gold. But there was a problem, and that problem was perception. The definition of alchemy, well, it comes from medieval times, and it was the precursor to chemistry, primarily concerned with taking base metals and converting them into gold. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the company that pulled off the impossible. However, none of it mattered because sometimes alchemy, even when successful, is a bit of a fool's errand. Let's talk about the story of Nakamichi.
Man, a cassette deck.
It all starts, as so many of our stories do, in post-war Japan in 1948.
It all began in 1948 with the establishment of a small magnetics research laboratory.
Etsuro Nakamichi starts the Nakamichi Research Corporation. And get this, it wasn't a stereo company at all. They did research.
You'll take these equations to the nuclear electronics lab.
They built stuff for other people. Optics, magnetic recording. They were the nerds behind the nerds. Universities, language labs, broadcasters all across Japan were Nakamichi's first customers. And that quiet contract work, the stuff that nobody else paid attention to, was exactly what made them dangerous. While everybody else was chasing flashy gadgets, Nakamichi was quietly honing their craft. So how do you go from anonymous subcontractor to the company that defined the entire music format?
A relentless pursuit that has produced the greatest achievements in history. Perfection. The quest continues at Nakamichi.
During the 50s and 60s, Nakamichi was Japan's best kept secret. They were building tape decks for everybody else. Fisher, Advent, KLH. If you bought a Harman Kardon back then, yeah, Nakamichi made it. All this work for all these different companies, well, made them pretty good at figuring out what goes into a really good tape deck. They learned how to make the tape mechanisms smoother, quieter, and more precise than anybody else's. But who cares, right? It's just cassettes. Well, they actually made cassettes sound good. Really good. Great. But the whole time it was behind somebody else's logo. But that kind of quiet excellence builds confidence. And confidence builds curiosity. And by the early 70s, Nakamichi thought, why not us? I grew up on a farm and we always had dogs and we always fed them kibble. So when I heard of Farmer's Dog, I got curious. I used to have a boxer. His name was Tinkerbell. He was the best dog in the world, but he passed away young and I didn't know just how processed his food was. So when I found out Farmer's Dog makes fresh, real food, I figured it's gotta be better, right? You've got to check out their website. You start to answer a bunch of questions about your dog, how much they weigh, what your goals are for your dog's health. If your dog's a little bit chunky, needs to lose weight, they're going to design just the right amount of food for your doggy. My first shipment was a trip. Box shows up, everything's frozen inside. And each one of my dogs, Gracie and Thor, had their own prepackaged food. Labeled, sealed, frozen, everything was ready to go. I was super excited to see how they were gonna react to the food. If your dog has currently been eating kibble, there may be a bit of an adjustment, but Farmer's Dog is 24/7 customer service? They're gonna guide you through the whole thing. I got texts and emails when my first box of Farmer's Dog shipped. More companies need to have that level of customer service and communication. It also comes with extras, a storage container, reusable bag. And when I gave Thor and Gracie their first bowl of Farmer's Dog, they went bananas. It's been great for their behavior too, because they look forward to mealtime. We're now on a schedule. But honestly, it's been awesome. So if you wanna get 50% off your first box, go to the link in the description. You'll also get free shipping. My experience with Farmer's Dog has greatly exceeded my expectations, and I think it'll exceed your expectations too.
The first products released under the new Nakamichi brand name were the 1700 cassette decks.
In the 70s, Nakamichi launched their first tape deck. No more OEMs, no more hiding behind somebody else's logo, it was their logo now. And small distributors in the US and the UK started buying Nakamichi tape decks. The problem is nobody knew who Nakamichi was until some of those early adopters hit play.
It was with the introduction of these revolutionary products that the cassette deck was proven at last to be worthy of hi-fi status.
Okay, well, good luck trying to polish a turd.
Holy crap! Someone polished a turd. It sounded unreal. Reviewers couldn't explain it. How was a cassette deck doing this? Speed, accuracy, dynamics, noise floor. Everything was surgical. And that first impression stuck. Overnight, Nakamichi became famous. They were the ultimate cassette playback device. They didn't chase trends, they actually created a cult. The cult of cassettes. A cassette cult. But the real magic hadn't even started yet, because the 1970s were about to hand Nakamichi a golden age of analog perfection. And Nakamichi was ready to own it.
No distortions.
I'm drawing a line in the sand.
We have to remember that when cassettes first came out, they weren't even meant for music. They were meant for dictation. They were meant for kids, for music on the go. They were cheap, not high fidelity. Reel to reel was still king. Cassettes were the Lunchables of audio. Convenient, meant to be put in your kids' backpacks. But Nakamichi didn't care what anyone thought. And in 1973, they released the Nakamichi 1000. Had 3 heads and a price tag that made most people choke on their coffee. It literally cost more than some reel-to-reel machines, which made no sense at all until you heard it. The Nakamichi 1000 didn't just play cassettes, it completely redefined cassettes. And then in 1975, a turning point happened. Reviewer Leonard Feldman, who was one of the most respected audio engineers at the time, tested the Nakamichi 550 portable cassette deck. And he wrote it was the most precise cassette deck he had ever tested. He praised the mechanical tolerances, the frequency response, and said it challenged the limits of the cassette format itself. And that review was the moment when America said, wait a minute. Who is Nakamichi? And what did they do? And why is this thing outperforming reel-to-reels? Suddenly, the budget format was creating studio-grade sound, and that cassette deck became a line in the sand. Before the Nakamichi 1000, cassettes were cheap and didn't sound good. After the Nakamichi 1000, cassettes were hi-fi, audiophile.
The cassette deck was proven at last to be worthy of hi-fi status.
But here's the thing, they weren't even close to being done yet, because once they proved the impossible, well, they wanted to do it again.
I've done it before and I can do it again.
After the 1000, Nakamichi doubled down. They refined everything: speed, bias, alignment. They didn't just release products. Everything they made was basically a manifesto. The Nakamichi 680ZX, the 628ZX were basically laboratories disguised as cassette decks. And people started realizing that Nakamichi was a little bit different from these other companies. It was a cult of engineers chasing perfection, one micrometer at a time. Hi-Fi magazines lost their collective minds. Pages of charts and graphs showing that Nakamichi had done the impossible. And they weren't flashy. They weren't making stuff that was beautiful. They were just doing something that no other company had done before, quietly embarrassing the other brands in the room. But their next product in 1982 came straight out of mythology.
Wow.
The Nakamichi Dragon in 1982, $2,500. That's around $8,000 today. It was the cassette deck to end all cassette decks. This thing adjusted the playback head angle real time, so any tape that you threw in there sounded awesome. Nobody had done this before. Not Sony, not Pioneer. No one. You could play a tape that you made in your cousin's garage and, well, even though it wasn't good, it was going to be as good as it got on the Dragon. Reviewers said it sounded almost too good, blurring the lines between reel-to-reel and cassette. Build quality, absurd. Pro studios and audiophiles alike started using the Dragon as their reference deck. Nakamichi had officially turned the most disposable audio format in history into an object of worship. But that kind of perfection, well, has problems. How do you top it? Because when you hit the summit, there's really only one place to go.
Can't be done, huh?
It's a CD player.
By the mid-80s, Nakamichi had done it. They pulled off the impossible. They turned the plastic cassette into a hi-fi weapon. The only problem is, well, you can't use the same hi-fi weapon in the 80s in the 90s. They needed more, so they expanded. Amplifiers, tuners, receivers. They used the same mentality, the same philosophy as they did with tape decks. The idea was simple. You trust Nakamichi for your tape playback, why not trust them for your receiver? And just like that, you could build an entire Nakamichi system. And it was all built on quiet confidence. No flashy lights, no gimmicks, just great sound. But even though they were making their best gear ever, even though their product portfolio had expanded, something was happening behind the scenes. A shiny new format was creeping up behind them.
Oh, how fancy.
Enter the compact disc. Digital, clean, perfect, convenient, and for Nakamichi, terrifying. However, they weren't going to get left behind. They would just make CD players. And they did. The OMS-7 and the OMS-5EIL. Built like tanks, sounded smooth as butter. Reviewers loved them. Hi-Fi magazine said they sounded analog, which in the 1980s was basically the highest compliment that you could give a CD player. But here's the thing, making CD players meant that they were competing with Sony, Pioneer, Marantz, and they were building these things by the millions. Nakamichi's players were great, but they were also expensive.
Developments in the optical data storage field are also reflected in Nakamichi audio products.
And they took too long to make, and they were too perfect, because the world wanted cheap and they wanted fast. And when digital killed analog, Nakamichi's core identity, which is the mechanical art form, really became a liability. But just before this whole thing came tumbling down, they found a new way to stay relevant. In a car.
Gonna make me spit my coffee out.
In the 90s, Nakamichi pulled off a kind of a strange move. They teamed up with Toyota. To be more specific, Lexus. Their mission? Well, make a car stereo with the same levels of precision that they made their tape decks with. And in early Lexus models, the LS400, the SC300, well, they came with a sound system. A Nakamichi one, wrapped in plastic and leather and wood. Suddenly, the Nakamichi name was now synonymous with luxury stereos. Meanwhile, in Japan, Nakamichi kept making everything by hand. Tight tolerances, small teams, obsessive quality control. They were stubborn. They wanted to keep the quality high, but that also meant keeping prices high. And it kept Nakamichi's reputation bulletproof. The problem was they were bleeding money.
Sets are history now?
Because everybody thinks they want perfection. Everybody thinks they want better sound until they see how much it costs. But here's the weirdest thing. Even though Nakamichi's products were basically perfect, they had a huge problem that never occurred to them. The problem wasn't a technical one. It was a perception one. They kind of lived in no man's land. Too expensive for normal people. Too cheap for rich people. And to most people that weren't really into hi-fi, the Nakamichi looked like, well, just any other black box. And then they saw the price tag, and they got some sticker shock. Why would you pay $1,000 for a Nakamichi tape deck when you can pay $300 for a Pioneer? And the true high-end audiophiles, they weren't impressed either. Why would you pay $1,000 for a black box Nakamichi deck when you could get a reel-to-reel? So Nakamichi was stuck because they weren't accessible and they also weren't aspirational. The magic was inside the box, not outside of the box. Head alignment, microprocessor stuff, but you couldn't show any of that on the showroom floor. And since it didn't look super flashy, well, that was a problem. They sold bias fine-tuning, but try putting that on a billboard. They also marketed like engineers, not like storytellers. And when the market split, luxury on top, budget on the bottom, Nakamichi didn't have a home in either. They couldn't cheapen their product without killing the brand, and they couldn't go ultra luxury without losing their base. So when the digital wave hit, they were unprepared. Here's the other problem. Tapes meant price Piracy, portability. Punk rock, DIY, tape trading, car stereos, Walkmans, roller skates. Nobody that truly loved cassettes were after a truly superior home cassette player. People who used cassettes weren't interested in high-end, and anybody that was interested in high-end wasn't really interested in cassettes. A superior cassette player is like saying a luxury cheeseburger. It may taste good, but remember, perception, not performance. The 90s equaled CDs, which equaled no degradation, which equaled perfect sound. CDs weren't the future anymore, they were the present. And cassettes were the past. The past also had a perception problem. And for a while, the cassette format still hung on in cars and in portable music players. But eventually, shiny and new wins. And the market hath spoken. CD players flooded the shelves, and they were also cheap. Even in 1987, I could get a CD player for $130. I'm no mathematician, but $130 is a lot less expensive than $2,500. And it played CDs perfectly. Did a Nakamichi Dragon playing a cassette sound better than me playing a CD on my $130 Emerson CD player? Didn't matter, because it's perception. Nakamichi kept making cassette decks. Incredible ones. But fewer and fewer people cared. And if we're being honest, in the aggregate, nobody cared about Nakamichi. Cassettes had a 7-year run, and the format itself was never designed for music. Granted, it could be good with the right tape material, with the right tape deck, but that was the exception and not the rule.
Meh. What do you mean, meh?
By the late 1990s, Nakamichi was running out of road. They were purchased by Grand Holdings, a Hong Kong-based company that also owned Sansui and Akai. On paper, it looked like salvation. In reality, not so much. Production moved out of Japan. The cost to make a Nakamichi decreased, but so did the quality. And in 2002, Nakamichi filed for civil rehabilitation, which is like bankruptcy. They thought they could make it, but the Tokyo operations were downsized, R&D slowed to a crawl, and their once legendary engineering team, well, it was a shell of its former self.
We'll take these equations to the nuclear electronics lab.
And what was left? Well, a logo. How ironic. The Nakamichi name. The name that was behind the scenes of so many bigger hi-fi companies was the only thing left of value.
Okay, well, good luck trying to polish a turd.
Here's the thing, when Nakamichi fell, it wasn't just a company, it was more of a philosophy. They treated sound like a craft, something to be perfected. They weren't just black boxes that played music, they were instruments. The problem was, people saw them as black boxes. The bigger problem is that engineers basically ran Nakamichi. They made a superior tape deck. The problem is, while they were trying to make the superior tape deck, nobody asked the question, should we be making a superior tape deck? Because the answer was no. What made sense in an engineer's mind does not make sense in a businessman's mind. Because the perception of this format was never going to be adopted by high-end audiophiles. Their price was too much for the people that actually loved the format. So even though they pulled off the impossible, even though they polished that turd to the point where it was no longer a turd anymore, none of it mattered because of the perception problem. Today, the Nakamichi name still lives on. They took the Dragon name, slapped it on some surround speakers and a subwoofer, and tried to charge like $5,000 for it. And it seems like the only thing that people will spend a lot of money for that has the Nakamichi name on it is, well, the old Nakamichi Dragon. Nakamichi always did things the hard way. They built the impossible, and they paid the price for it. Their pursuit of perfect cassette sound made them a legend. But the pursuit of perfect cassette sound also was their downfall. But the name Nakamichi will live on as legend because they accomplished the impossible. They were the only audiophile alchemist, even though sometimes alchemy is a fool's errand. If you like this video, check out this other video I made about CDs being back in 2025 and now cassettes. I explain the insanity. Thank you so much for watching.